Hey everyone, welcome back. This is Maddie, and last week, or earlier this week rather, I sent a poll on social media asking you guys to let me know what you would like to see next. And I am happy to announce that the winner of that poll was the story time. So today I will be sharing with you guys the story and the journey of how I was diagnosed with my mental illnesses and what led me to kind of seek out the help. I do want to put a disclaimer out there. So, I am not a doctor or a psychology professional, and I'm in no way trying to create or give you a diagnosis. So, if you are feeling any abnormal symptoms, then I highly suggest making an appointment with your primary care physician or a mental health professional. That way, you guys can seek the help that you need here. Because what I'm sharing today is my personal experiences. So, it may be different than what you're experiencing, and tips and tricks that may work for me may be different for you guys. And the best way to know how to treat your illness is to actually seek somebody who specializes in that. So I just wanted to give that disclaimer up at the beginning, guys. Again, if you guys are relating to anything I'm talking about here, then please go speak to somebody who can help you professionally. So before I get into this, I want to let you guys know that before I was diagnosed with my mental illnesses, I had little to no idea what these mental illnesses were. I used to be the type of person that thought depression was when you were sad, and anxieties were when you were scared of something, and I never really understood it. And I even took an abnormal psych class in high school, and we learned about these types of things, but it never really registered to me until several years ago. Several years ago when I was diagnosed was when it really set in, and really when I started to relate and familiarize myself with these things. I also want to mention that everyone's experience may be different than mine. So it's unique and personal, and it's not going to be the same for everybody. It's not a cookie cutter diagnosis. It's not a cookie cutter experience. It doesn't fit within a specific mold, and mental illnesses can vary person to person. They have the DSM-V5, I believe it is now. That's what they use to diagnose mental illnesses. And one thing that my psychologist has actually told me is, she said, if you read through these things, you will self-diagnose yourself with almost every mental illness in there, just because it's such a broad spectrum and there's so many traits and characteristics of each mental illness that sound very similar. So it is important to not self-diagnose as well, and to really seek somebody who specializes in this type of stuff. So all I can provide you guys with is my own personal experience, in hopes that you guys can relate or understand what it can be for those who are diagnosed with mental illnesses. I don't even like the term mental illness, but that's neither here nor there. Well, that's another discussion. So let me share my story with you guys. So this all happened about 8 years ago when I went away to school for the very first time. I went to a university that was about 8 or 9 hours away from my family. So during that first year away from family, a lot of different events happened. My childhood dog died, my grandpa died, my childhood cat died. All of these traumatic events and upsetting events happened within that same year. And it was me being so far away from family, it was hard for me to kind of go through those obstacles while still going to school. I still had to go to class, I still had to attend my university, but those events really did distract me and contributed to a lot of what I'm about to get into next. So in addition to those events that happened during my time at the university, I also had a lot of freedom. And I don't want to say that that's a bad thing. Freedom is great. You get to learn and, grow and figure yourself out. But I had so much freedom that it was liberating, and I was responsible for myself. I didn't have any parents or teachers or anyone that was checking in on me, making sure I was doing my work. And that freedom, really got to me. I would skip classes, not for any reason, I just didn't want to go, and there were no penalties at the time. Some classes didn't have attendance policies. Some classes did, and I would just, make sure I didn't exceed that minimum. But I would skip class, and there was really no reason for it. It was just, I just didn't feel like going. But one of the biggest things that led me to seek out help was I could not focus and I was not motivated. So I thought I had ADD because all of my friends who were diagnosed with ADD had similar symptoms. They were like, yeah, I can't focus either. I take, this medication to help me focus and to get motivated. So I actually went to the school psychologist to get diagnosed for ADD so I could get that medication and, cope with what I was going through. But one of the things they make you do before you see the psychologist is, at the university that I was going to at least, they had a student survey. And this survey was designed for you to answer and rate your experiences with like a number of things. It was a long survey. I think it was like 50 plus questions. It may have even been 100, but I remember going through it and it took some time. So based off of the answers, when I went in to see the psychologist, she actually told me that everything that I had answered did not align with ADD, but it aligned with depression. So when she told me this, I was absolutely shocked, because going back to the knowledge that I had at the time, I thought depression was sadness. And I told her, I was like, I don't feel sad. So this was really the first time that I was introduced to mental illnesses. This is really the first time that I learned about mental illnesses. And I wasn't necessarily sad, and I just felt defeated. Again, I didn't feel motivated. I kind of struggled to do everyday tasks. I felt fatigued. I just liked to sleep in. And I just thought that was a normal thing, being an adolescent, being a young adult. So it was really unique, and it was really shocking for me to hear that that was actually related to depression and my mental illness. The lack of motivation and energy was what really affected me during this time. And I was part of a sorority, and I actually removed myself from those social functions just because I didn't have the emotional energy or the mental capacity to really be present with those. And that really started to impact my college experience. It was almost numbing. I just kind of went through the motions, and I would stop texting my childhood friends, the friends back home. I kind of, removed myself, and it wasn't on purpose. It's just the mental illness can be so consuming with your life that you just kind of want to be left alone with your thoughts. So I kind of removed myself from creating friendships. I wasn't texting my friends, and it had a huge impact. So I was treated and prescribed the medication at the university, but I ended up dropping out from the university for personal reasons, and I could no longer be prescribed the medication or see that doctor. So I ended up Googling a psychiatrist so I could continue with my medication and my treatment. And I found a doctor, and I did not read the reviews. I just knew that it was covered by my insurance at the time. So I started seeing that doctor, and it was the most awful experience I had ever had. This doctor had no interest in getting a treatment plan in place for me. She solely prescribed me the medication and would check in on me once every couple months. So she would just ask how the medication was doing, and she didn't have any interest, or she didn't really like explore any other options. So for me, I can't do just medication. I have to have a whole treatment. So that was a really negative experience for me, and I ended up quitting the medication without any medical supervision, which is not recommended, and it's not healthy at all. And please never ever quit your medications without your supervision from the doctor. So I quit that medication, and fast forward to a couple years later when I and my fiance ended up moving to South Florida. So this initial diagnosis was about 8 years ago. So I'm fast forwarding to about 2 or 3 years ago. And I started experiencing similar symptoms. I wasn't sad, but again, I would just get easily frustrated, lack of energy, lack of motivation. I was just numb, just going through the motions again. And I just didn't feel fulfilled, or I didn't feel happy. So that's when I started seeking out help again. And luckily I found a great doctor over in Delray Beach that has been astronomical with my treatment, and I feel so much better. Hence why I'm inspired to help you guys out. But that was huge, going from what I had previously experienced with a psychologist or psychiatrist who would just prescribe me medication, and then moving into a doctor or a facility that creates a whole unique treatment plan for you. So I used to go to therapy every week, and I would see my psychiatrist. So the way it works is your psychiatrist prescribes you your medications, and your psychiatrist kind of creates a treatment plan and will recommend a therapist. So my psychiatrist recommended that I go to therapy. He also recommended I introduce exercise and improve my diet. So those were all of the things that he created for my treatment plan, in addition to the medication. So he's not the type that just prescribes the medication and hopes that you improve. So I started seeing a therapist every week. I was taking my medication regularly, and I actually started seeing a nutritionist because everything just impacts it. So the lack of energy, the lack of motivation. I took a look at my diet, and my diet wasn't a complete and balanced diet. So I really had to start with baby steps. And those baby steps are making sure you're getting enough sleep, making sure you're drinking enough water, making sure you're exercising, making sure you're eating right. Those are all key components to creating a wellness plan for yourself, in addition to medications. Medications kind of help, it helps with the other things, but it's really those basics that really, really play a huge impact in your treatment. So I would see my therapist every week, and it was eye-opening. And I can confidently say now that the depression has subsided, but I started noticing that I had more anxious tendencies. So depression and anxiety tend to go hand in hand with each other, and it's not uncommon for you to be diagnosed with one and then later be diagnosed with the other. So luckily the medication I'm on treats both depression and anxiety. So all it is just a shift in the therapy and like the methods for coping. So my depression subsided, and then I started to focus on the anxieties. So anxiety is very complex, and it can display and be expressed in different ways depending on the individual. So I can only, again, speak and share with what I've experienced personally. So I struggle from mild forms of social anxiety and perfectionism. So I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions with both of them. So I don't feel or get anxious at the thought of interacting with people. What I struggle with specifically is following through with plans that I've made earlier in the week. And I'm sure a lot of us can relate to that. During the week, you may feel great, and then the weekend comes and you just want to veg out on your couch watching Netflix. So I feel like that's a lot more common, but it's not like I can't talk to people or interact with people. I love talking to people, love interacting with people. But I just have difficulty following through with plans and making plans and initiating those plans. I also struggle with perfectionism, and I feel like that's another misconception too, is I don't try to make sure everything's perfect. I'm not like obsessive or compulsive about it. Perfectionism to me, or what I experience with perfectionism, is if I'm not good at something, I won't even do it. So an example I can give you guys is, I'm going to school right now, and I have assignments online that I have to do weekly, and I tend to procrastinate, and it's not because I don't want to do it. I procrastinate because I worry that I'm not going to be perfect at it. If I don't get an A on every single paper or every single assignment, that to me is a failure for myself. And I set these really high expectations for myself. By setting these high expectations for myself, that ends up, me having an excuse or avoiding doing it just because I'm scared of failing at it and not doing well at it. And, you know, this is something that I'm still coping with now, is these anxieties and coping with the perfectionism. That's my story about how I was diagnosed with my mental illnesses. And you'll discover that you may be diagnosed with one thing, and then as you talk to a professional about it, you start uncovering different layers to it. And what I want to instill with you guys is, looking back on my childhood and everything, there is not one single cause. I can't look back and say it was, you know, this or that. It's just a multitude of different things that happen in your environment. So I think me being away from my family and having those events happen while I was away, and me being so far away, I think that contributed to it. But I also think it's the expectations that I put on myself. So I can be really hard on myself, and I think we tend to be our worst enemies sometimes. I would worry about disappointing people, disappointing myself, so I would just avoid. That was my way of coping, is just avoiding. So what I do now is I see my therapist every other week, and we talk about why I avoid. Getting to the root cause of the mental illness is probably the hardest thing with coping and dealing with a mental illness, is trying to figure out why. I wish I had an easy answer for you guys, but I don't. I hope you guys found this video helpful, and if you guys still have questions about it, please feel free to drop it in the comments or send me a direct message. I am available for you guys. You guys can follow me on Instagram, or pretty much Instagram, because I'm not on Twitter, and that's really like my main source of social media right now is Instagram. So you guys can follow me at Madison and Dill. That's all one word, no periods or anything. So Madison and Dill on Instagram. But thank you guys so much for coming on this journey with me. And if you want to share your story, please let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear your stories about how you came across your mental illnesses and what you learned about it, because I know I sure as heck learned a lot about mine. I learned that depression is not just sadness. You know, depression it can be so many different things. Anxiety, same thing. It's not just being scared. It's a whole multitude of things. I learned about perfectionism, and I learned perfectionism is in fact a real mental illness with real ways to cope with it. So this is what I've been diagnosed with, and this is what I have been coping with for the past few years now. So I look forward to getting to know you guys. I look forward to hearing about your stories, hearing about what coping and how you guys found out about yours. So thank you all for following along on my journey, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Oh, also, please let me know what you guys would like to see, because I want to keep creating content for you guys. I want to keep you guys involved throughout the process. So if there's something that you want to see, please let me know. I do have ideas and like timelines and everything, but I want to make sure that I'm also keeping in mind the voices of you guys. So I know a few of you guys have messaged me, and I will take the time to read those messages and respond to it, but I have seen some great ideas, so thank you all so much. Also, thank you for being so supportive with this. I am astounded with the amount of support I received this past week when I launched this channel. So thank you guys so much. I really want to reach a broad audience as well. So please, if you can, share this channel, share this video. Hopefully it can help inspire some other people as well, and we can really build a great community and really help other people and educate people on mental illnesses. So thank you guys, and I will see you all next week.